Today is June 28th, 2024. Now that I've finished my first year in college, I'm beginning to open myself out into the world. I feel like optimism for me is kind of like this sacred thing. I'm driven by this excitement that there's something further I can go towards, that there's something more amazing worth experiencing. Looking into my life, optimism pretty much drives me to do the things I do. It's what inspires me, it's what motivates me and pushes me to keep after it at life. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. I think everything's just getting started.
A new adventure begins. This time, 2,200 miles northeast to the beautiful city of Toronto, Canada. 7 months ago, it was a journey northward to Cascadia in the hearts of winter, a soulful desperation finding myself again from the depths of darkness. This time, the peak of summer and Solstice. A joyful odyssey as I enter a stage of life where I'm free to fly again, boundless and untethered. Later, we make it to the northeast, into the metropolis. The electricity of morning summer air felt 30,000 feet up. At long last, it was time to experience the unbridled, pulsating energy of Toronto, Canada. Welcome to Toronto. There was a certain grittiness in the air. The energy felt jagged, alive, restless. A thrum in the pavement, engine reverberating through the underbelly of the city. We blazed forward to downtown, kick-starting the engines to life. Summer in Toronto. Maybe it's the humidity, the stickiness in the air, or the chirping of cicadas. It's this buzzing of summer air that makes the season so whimsical, ethereal, efflorescence. I could not help but notice the immense contrast I once felt in the heart of winter, in the Pacific Northwest, to now, basking in the warmth of Ontario summer, feeling freer than I've ever had before. Like following the natural trajectory of seasonal change, I was back to soaring, to finding the spark I had for so long been searching for. And now, not only could I metaphorically feel it, I was experiencing it firsthand. And Toronto gave me the most perfect entrance I could ever envision. The next day begins with an hour-and-a-half drive down south to Niagara, home of the famous Niagara Falls. Today, I was going to cross off one of my childhood bucket list items, to see the falls in real life. It's one of those things you naturally learn about growing up, but to imagine that you'd one day come face to face with one of the greatest wonders of the world is far beyond surreal. We journey around Lake Ontario, first passing the neighboring cities of Mississauga, Oakville, Hamilton, before entering the city of St. Catharines into Niagara. I gaze out the window, nose pressed against the glass, as miles of lush green farmland stretch far into the distance, and the coastline of Lake Ontario sits by my left. Seemingly an infinite lake that goes on for miles and miles, without any end in sight. It was hard to imagine a gargantuan waterfall being located in such a flat landscape, but eager to finally see it with my own eyes, we continue to press on. Great Niagara Falls, sitting in between the two great countries of the United States and Canada. On the American side lies Bridal Veil and American. On the Canadian side lies Horseshoe, the three collectively forming what has become to known as the famous Niagara Falls. After taking the funicular down to the dock, we begin our journey, the journey to the center of the waterfall, where I enter a world unlike any other. We We begin snaking upstream of the river. Gorges of 100-meter drops surround us from both sides. As we inch closer and closer to the heart of the waterfall, legs buckling in anticipation, heart rate rising as I clench harder on the metal bar. Welcome, my friends, to the experience of a lifetime, Niagara Falls. One word to describe the experience, it'd be exhilarating. 700,000 gallons every second, furiously torrenting down from above. Niagara Falls, in all of its grandeur and majesty, was a titan's voice echoing through the bones of earth, reminding myself how small yet utterly alive I was. A small piece in the making of something greater, something beyond. And as the ferry slowly came to its stop, I knew that I was leaving with something more than just a memory. I was carrying a piece of the eternal. From above, Niagara transformed, one a furious torrent from below into a canvas straight out of an artistic masterpiece. Its river unfurling like a ribbon of glass, and its once mighty roar reduced to just a murmur, as if nature was allowing me to experience both its ferocity and grace under a single breath. Summer had reached its crescendo, Solstice, and if there was a moment of time I'd wish I could just cling on a bit longer, it would be this, golden hour of summer. There was no better feeling than this. It felt like I belonged to something larger, as if summer itself had opened up its arms and folded me into its warm embrace. Night falls, we watch the glimmering lights of Niagara shine brightly in summer indigo skies. The day comes to a close, and we turn toward Toronto once more, cruising by Lake Ontario, young, free, and wild. beauty of Toronto, shimmering in the darkness of the night. Seen from miles and miles away, CN Tower stands majestically, piercing through the sky like a beacon of light. Wherever the traveler goes, they will always find a way home. The skyline of Toronto, a lighthouse to the lost. The city that glows through the night, eternally through the solstice of summer. The city, cruising by Lake Ontario, steady, luminous, and alive. The following morning, we set sail to the Toronto Islands, a ferry ride located right off downtown, a little expedition away from the city, toward the islands, and sailing forth to open water. Melodically humming in my ears. We draw near to Center Island, the largest of the archipelago, as downtown lingers in the distance. Waves break gently against the ferry's hull. Small boats slow near the dock shore. Seagulls dot the skies above. I sail forward to discover that great adventures are always about the sheer distance, but venturing just far enough to find a new perspective. And here, in the islands, I found a different part of Toronto. Away from the raw, pulsating energy, I found the softer, hidden, more whimsical side of the city. You could call me a romanticist, and maybe that's just who I am. Parks speak something special to me. Maybe it's because of this spiritual connection I have with nature, where thoughts seem to flow more freely, where I'm reminded of the more important things in life. 7 months ago, during my darkest hours, it was nature. These moments where I found a refuge, where I found the beauty of life again. It's simple. You look at the trees, the lake, the scenery, and you begin to realize just how caught up we are in life sometimes. And you think to yourself, what exactly matters in life when you can find peace from the environments around you, where you can find artistry everywhere you go. I'm reminded that life is just one artistic canvas, and what you decide to paint on there is entirely up to you, and why I create the films that it creates. Sometimes the greatest joys in life are derived from the simplest moments. Me and my parents renting out a 4-person bike, adventuring the islands of Toronto. Every corner we turn, a mystery awaits. And there, I find myself discovering one of the most beautiful views of the city, and as I like to call it, a masterful stroke of art. As I create these films, I think to myself, to be a romanticist, an artist of the world, what exactly does that mean? The electricity of summer, the grandeur of Toronto. I look at all of this with the lens of an artist, and all I do is speak life into what I see, what I feel. And Solstice, and my music, my films, is how I share this beauty with the rest of the world. On my last day in Toronto, we drive eastward to Scarborough Bluffs, a natural geological formation created from sediment deposits over 1,200 years ago, set against the shore of Lake Ontario. I came into Toronto believing to find its vast concrete urban sprawl, but I take away with a deep appreciation of the numerous green spaces found throughout the city. It's such a special experience to find quiet, intimate spots away from the hustle of urban life. At Scarborough, I found Toronto to be at its most contemplative, a place that feels untouched, set apart, like the city's hidden heartbeats. The whisper of wind, the slow lapping of waves, the abundant summer greenery everywhere I go. I felt like I stepped into somewhere where no worries seemed to ever be present. On that summer day, I found serenity. The sun lowers behind the skyline, the final blaze of solstice lights. It's night before departure, and the city seems to bid farewell. Every shadow, every flicker of light carrying the weight of departure. In the heights of 2024 summer, I found Toronto, the eternal flame. A city 2,200 miles away from home, where I found a soul so vibrant, passionate, colorful. Thank you, my friend. 3:30 a.m. Roads near empty, city half awake. The liminal space between wanting to stay but having to leave. As the rest of the city sleeps through the early morning, I begin my voyage back home, driving along the same highway in which I saw Toronto for the very first time. I stare out the window, watching the skyline slowly recede behind me. Toronto will still be here, but I will not. It was time to move on, and while I found refuge in Solstice summer, seasons move on, people move on, and life moves on. However, I carry on the torch of Toronto, the flaming soul of the city. I tell myself, run free, run far. Departure isn't the end, but the proof that the journey never really stops. It keeps going. San Francisco International Airport, the place of many beginnings and ends. While this voyage comes to a close, life was really just beginning. From running away from darkness in Cascadia to running amongst the summer lights in Solstice, it was time to run a proper race, one that allowed me to freely soar high into the skies.
Sophomore year of college. What a view this is. Whew. Holy crap.
The spirit of Solstice lives on after summer, and soon as 2024 comes to a close, I was on the precipice of an adventure even greater. But first, my friends, is where I finish my story. A of Solstice.